Other than physiography, the most important topic that forms the base for you to study the whole of Indian geography is the geology of the country. Now, geology of India is significant because it determines the mineral resource. You will come to know the relationship that exists between the type of rocks, the type of geological formation, and its relationship that develops with iron ore formation, manganese ore formation, with certain things like why petroleum is going to be found in some places, why not, where exactly is water resources available, how deep will be the water resources in that place, what will be the quality of water in that region, what exactly will be the type of rocks that will be found in that place, and these rocks will going to determine what type of soil as well. Geology will also go on to determine the type of a physiography. For example, if it's going to be young and it's going to be rugged, new areas formed, it will go on to be very, very unfit for any type of a human habitation as well as transport. We're going to be talking about rugged topography, we're going to be talking about flat topography. Geology determines that part as well. Geology at the same time determines a lot of other aspects which are associated indirectly with the country. For example, it will go to determine your irrigation. Or why is it that irrigation and something like a canal irrigation will be practiced in the plains of the Ganges? Why not it is going to be practiced in Maharashtra or in Telangana region or in any other place is related to its geology. Geology goes on to determine the industrial base as well, because there are going to be six types of resources that are going to be found in the vicinity of any region, then that is a place that is going to be fit for the location of an industry as well. Geology also determines, incidentally, there is a transport routes, and if you are going to be building any type of a railway that can go to run on a very rough terrain or something like a very solid terrain, you cannot go on to possibly build these type of railways so easily and cost effectively in the Gangetic Plain region. The tracks that are going to be very, very solidly laid. And when they are going to be very, very solid, that means a lot of things in this case. And when we are going to be talking about a lot of things, that effectively means that it will be solid, the tracks will be fixed very fast, the tracks will be very, very strong as well, and you can go on to run a train that can go on to run with the speed of 350 kilometers per hour as well in this case. So the significance of the topic goes on to transcend a lot of things. It equips you to develop certain degree of a co-relationship with the other topics. It equips you to build a base for yourself for the whole of Indian geography. It equips you with a certain degree of an insight which we can go on to use it for the purpose of understanding of the other topics as well. That is the significance of the topic here. Consequently, this topic is going to be pretty significant from the perspective of the prelims examination. And it's not that it's going to be too usual for the questions to be asked from this topic, but still there are going to be a good number of sections and topics that can be possibly asked. One of these questions that you're going to see on your screen is going to be, which of the following is the correct sequence of this graphic layers in India from oldest to the youngest? That was one of the questions that was asked in general studies. And imagine the options: Dharwad, Kadapa, Vindhya and Gondwana, and of course Kadapa, Dharwad, Vindhya and Gondwana, and so on, so forth. Now, unless you happen to know that is which way the layers that formed first and which way the layers that formed later on, there is no way that you can go on to answer this question at all. It's simply not possible. And you will also come to know that is what exactly is the meaning of Kadapa region, Dharwad, and so on and so forth. But effectively, for your understanding, it is the correct answer in this case is Dharwad, Kadapa, Vindhya, and then the Gondwana. Pick up another of this question that is on your screen, that is matching of the list 1 with list 2, and you're going to find in this sample suture zone that is matched with Greater Himalayas in Tibetan Plateau, main central thrust, main boundary thrust, the Himalayan frontal fault, and that is going to be matched with Greater Himalayas in Tibetan, region, Lesser Himalayas and the Shivalik, the main boundary thrust, and the Greater Himalayas and the Lesser Himalaya region, and the Shivalik and the Peninsular region. Now, this is going to be matching that you have to make here. So, you need to know about these examples, matching most of these matching, and when you're going to match it, that requires examples. And when you're going to be having these examples, that makes it easy for you. Then there is a concept-based topic that is, of course, it's a fact-based as well, concept-based as well. For example, the Indian plate collided with Eurasian plate and is marked, and the mark of its collision is preserved in, and this is a rare information, Dras, Khoistan, Lato, and of course all of the above. Now, effectively, this is going to be for the purpose of confusing this student. The place where India collided first with the whole of Eurasia had been, its entire record has been preserved in Lato. And that is why it goes on to be significant. Of course, the first ranges that went on to emerge, that was Dras, Khoistan, is going to be known by that name as well. The next of this question is, the western and eastern syntaxial bends were formed because of the formation of triple junction, the rotation of India after its collision leading to arc-shaped formation and syntaxial bend formation in northwest, intensive folding of Indian plate, the presence of weak crustal flexures. Now, essentially it is going India collided, and after having collided, turned, it rotated itself. And that is why you're going to find this syntaxial bend. Now, incidentally, all of these questions are going to be answered in the course of the discussion that is going to be ensuing right now. Of course, other is, which of the following is not correct about Indus Sampo Sancho Sampo Suture zone? We have talked about this feature, and we are going to be talking about which of the following is not going to be correct. So, is it going to be, that is the first option, sedimentary rocks comprising this zone consist of sandstones and shales, and they exhibit rapidly changing character. The whole of the rock assemblage being called as an ophiolite. They are highly deformed and characterized by pressure of a vertical thrust sheets or anything that lies north of the main central thrust. Now, the answer, of course, is going to be ophiolite, and some of the students who may not go on to know what ophiolite is, because they may not have built their base in this case, then this is the term, this is the topic that has been used in NCERT. Of course, it is going to be at NCERT level, but then all of those people who may not had a very good schooling, they may have been convent educated, they may have had a distorted education, all in all, they do go on to find a problem in understanding and building a perception that these topics are going to be difficultly dealt with. It's not so. It is still at the school level. This is another of this question that you can go on to pick it up. Arrange the following Himalayan structure from south to north. Central crystalline axis, main boundary thrust in the Sampo Suture zone and the Tethin Himalaya. Now, that requires that is, you have a complete imagination developed with respect to that topic. Only then you will be able to answer that. And of course, this answer is going to be part of the topic. One of the last of these questions is going to be, in this case, India's geological personality is an amalgamation of Indian plate, the Eurasian plate, and the Gangetic plain, all of which evolved in broadly three phases: evolution of the peninsula, evolution of the Himalayas, and evolution of the plains. Now, you know what exactly? And this is going to be our topic. How is it? We go on to answering this question. In trying to answer this question, we are going to be coming on to the topic here. India's geological personalities is indeed an amalgamation of Indian plate, the Eurasian plate, and the Gangetic plain, all of which evolved in broadly three phases. The first was the evolution of the peninsula, the second was the evolution of the Himalayas, and the last was the evolution of the plains. All these regions have different geological characteristics, and these are suggestive of the fact that they have been formed during different periods of geological cycle. Now, when you go on to deal with this topic, it is expected that the student must be having a complete idea about how the history of the earth is divided, which were the rocks that were formed during different periods of geological history, because history of the earth cannot go on to be correlated here with the whole of India, although it is correlated, but then the different type of terminologies will not be required to be explained in this case here. So the assumption in this case is that the Eastman must have known what exactly are rocks, how is it that the rocks are formed, what exactly is the name of Precambrian, Cambrian, Ordovician, Silurian, Devonian, Carboniferous, and etc. And how is it that the history of the earth has been divided and what were the broad characteristics of it. Now, having known it, you can go on to now understand India's present position. The present position in this case is going to be very simple, and that is comprising of there is India, which is now part of a political entity, but India have been overall a part of a different continental nuclei during a different geological periods. It got itself attached and then dismembered and again converged and then again fragmented again and numerous times to ultimately get itself welded into Asia to form its new continent. So this is what goes on to form what we're going to be calling it as the peninsular India, and this is going to be the plain region. The whole of this region from here to here is going to be the plain region, and of course these are the mountainous portions of India. This is what will going to be mountainous regions of it. So there are going to be three entities that are going to be welded into one. That is what we're going to be calling it by the name of peninsula. Then of course the Himalayas that are going to be here, and the last of course is going to be the plains in this case. So all of them went on to form during different period, and they somehow got themselves with each other. Of course, the present position of India is not what it was millions and billions of years back. From the origin of the earth to its present, and during all of this period, the peninsular India was nowhere near wherever it is going to be. It was somewhere else. So this is where it was. From the origin of the earth to its present, all of it with the peninsular portion was nowhere where it is right now. It was co-joined with Australia, Antarctic, and just go to take a look at all of those continents. That's the place where India was. And then you're going to find Africa, South America, Antarctic, Australia, North America, Eurasia. See how is it that the whole of the country was co-joined with almost all of these continents to form this supercontinent that was going to be called by the name of Gondwana. Now a very, very common name in this case. And during the entire geological segment, during different geological periods, different developments took place and the evolution took place in various stages. These stages and its evolution are preserved in the form of layers, one over the other, one over the other. So the oldest are going to be below, and above it is going to be the younger one, above younger one, and so on and so forth. They are preserved in such a manner that the oldest layers are at the bottom and the youngest are at the top. Now understand this part. That is, during all of this period, the whole of the earth in a molten phase of sorts. And when you can go to find that the earth was going to be in a molten phase, this is how exactly the picture of the earth was. That is the first out. The temperature of the surface of the earth was going to be 700 to 800 degrees centigrade, and the entire of the earth was a molten ball of sorts. Now, as the temperature decreased, the entire of this upper portion, which was molten, that started getting itself solidified. Thus, the first stage was the solidification of the upper layer of liquid basalt, because it was made of basalt, of which the whole of the earth was made of. It was essentially a liquid basalt, and it was liquid basalt that was constructing it. The solidified layer formed the first crust of basalt and also the first layer in this case. Thereafter, this layer got itself metamorphosed. Now, when basalt goes on to get metamorphosed, it turns into green stone. Now, that is significant, and this is information that you will go on to get when you have studied the types of rocks. This metamorphosed version is called as greenstone, and it formed the first layer of Indian lithosphere that was floating on the underlying asthenosphere. So, you had the underlying asthenosphere and over which lithosphere was floating. To make it simple, that is, the earth was liquid, and the upper portion of the liquid earth got itself solidified. That is started floating, and that is started floating on the underlying liquid layer. That was called as asthenosphere, and the new solidified form was going to be called by the name of lithosphere. So this is how the first layers evolved. From the first layer and the bottommost layer to the last layer and the present top layer, the whole of India passed through several stages. The first layer solidified out of molten basalt, and it was called as the green stone. Now, when basalt metamorphoses, it turns into green stone. And the first layer was, of course, that was going to be called by the name of greenstone. And it was this greenstone that was the first layer which started floating on the underlying asthenosphere. So, you can imagine this whole situation was, that is, you had a greenstone. Now, this was a layer that formed. This layer was floating on the underlying asthenosphere. The first greenstone that formed was called as older greenstone belt. That was the name that was given to it. An older greenstone belt was the relic of the primordial crust. Primordial crust, that means it was the first crust that was called by this name, primordial, meaning it was the primitive, the first crust ever formed. So the first layer was formed, and first layer was formed out of solidification of the molten basalt. Thereafter, there was a second layer that formed, and of course the second layer will be on the top of this greenstone belt. That means the second layer that was going to be on the top of it, that was going to be called by the name of a newer greenstone belt. That was the second one. So first layer formed, and then thereafter there was second layer formed. Now all the layers that subsequently go on to get formed, they are above one another. Thereafter, on this layer, sedimentary rocks mixed with volcanic rocks were deposited. That means it was on this layer that sedimentary volcanic rocks were deposited. Sedimentary rocks, then volcanic rocks, they were mixed with each other, and that is how they got themselves deposited. Sedimentary rocks led with volcanic rocks. And all the three layers combined, and maybe there was a fourth layer as well, that is a sedimentary and volcanic succession as well. The last, maybe only sedimentary in this case. Together, all of these formed what we're going to say, that is basement. This led to formation of a basement. Now, this basement meant that all the subsequent rock formations and everything that was going to happen on the top of it. And the first nuclei that formed, the first layer that formed on the whole of the earth, it may have been like this here, some of them may have been here, some of them may have been here. So, and all of these nuclei, let's say all of these nuclei had the same characteristics, same structure. That is, a small nuclei used to be having older greenstone, then newer greenstone, then sedimentary volcanic succession, then the sedimentary layers, and so on, so forth. Now, all of these basements were small nuclei which are floating over the asthenosphere, and there were several such type of basements. You can go on to take a look at it. This is one picture that will go on to give you a look of it. Now, all of these are going to be small basements, a small nuclei which go on to be acting like that of a basement. Now, as these basements and nuclei used to collide, they used to join together. And anywhere they used to collide, they used to join together, and they used to joining through formation of an orogeny or a mountain that we call it. So they started joining together. So more and more joined and more mountains formed. So mountains always form the welding site of it. And this is how the earth, the crust started evolving. So India also started evolving in the same manner. We are not going to be separating India out of it in any manner at all. So all of these nuclei started colliding, and in the process of collision, they started increasing the size of it. Because at the edge of it, the collision led to formation of a mountain, and that is how that started growing as well. So this keeps on taking place, that is happening. And as you can go to take a look at it, there were many crustal nuclei on the whole of the earth that were wandering here, there and everywhere, and they were colliding, they were joining together, all of them colliding, again joining together, and that was leading to an increase in the size of these continental nuclei. It is these continental nuclei which in the process of their collision, again recollision, and sometimes fragmentation as well, like in this case. So collision, fragmentation, collision, that started leading to the evolution of these continents. Now, as you will go on to take a look at it, that it is this form that ultimately led to the evolution of India as well, that is shaping up. Just go on to give 2 minutes of a time to it, and you will be able to understand how is it that it is evolving. It is still growing, and you'll see that is all of these are fusing into the form of a continent, and the place where they are going to be fusing, they are going to be fusing it through a mountain, or what we are going to be calling it as an orogenic belt. So the size of the crust in this case is increasing. So India's size was also increasing. So there were small nuclei. And which were these nuclei? One of these nuclei was Dharwad, another was going to be Vindhya, another was going to be Kadapa, another was going to be Bastar, another was going to be, and they all started co-joining together. Imagine India is made of no less than something like of this type, no less than some 20-30 different type of nuclei, which all in all got themselves fused together. So it was this fusion that was taking place that led to the increase in the size of the area of the continental nuclei. And all of these were having basements. That is, basement means there is from top to bottom, they were the one, that is the area that is increasing. And from top to bottom, as you will go to observe it, they were made of the first layer, the bottommost layer was the older greenstone belt, thereafter it was a newer greenstone belt, and thereafter it was a sedimentary volcanic succession, and that was the way that it started evolving in this manner. So it is in this process that the continents started growing. So whatever continents that you have seen it have evolved in such a manner. In India, these were the orogenic, these were the different type of groups that had been there. For example, one of them was the Singhbhum region, another was in Orissa, Keonjhar region, and then there was another one that was called as Bastar, and then Eastern Ghats. They were all continental nuclei which collided, and that is how that led to the evolution of different type of continents. Now, you take a look at it and you're going to find it has been such a complex process, all of them collision and then fragmentation, and now India is taking shape. Take a look. This is where India is taking its shape. That's Africa. That is where India is. And Africa has kept on changing its shape. And India, along with Antarctica, along with Australia, along with South America, and that fragmented, and India started moving northward. It moved very, very fast, and they started colliding, and then ultimately it collided to lead to the formation of what we going to call it as the present geological personality. So India is made of 3 components. That is, the first is going to be, of course, that is Indian Shield, then the Himalayan region, and then this portion that we're going to be calling as the plain region of it. Now, this goes on to explain the present geological personality of the country. Now, understand all of them, how is it that they ultimately went on to form. As we talked about that there were different type of continental nuclei, and which were these continental nuclei? This was a continental nuclei. This was one of these continental nuclei. Then there was another of these continental nuclei that was here. Another of these continental nuclei that was here. Then and so on so forth. Now as you go on to take a look at it, there is all of these continental nuclei started getting themselves fused. So the oldest of this orogenic cycle are going to be preserved and observed in some Archean era. That means Archean was the oldest one in this case, and that led to the formation of a mountain. That was the first one. In the middle Archean, that means above it, some of these first mountains went on to form. They were going to be called by the name of Singbum Kyeonjer mountains and Singbum Kyeonjer orogeny. That was thereafter it was Singbum Kyeonjer orogeny. This was the first one, Singbum Kyeonjer orogeny, and thereafter in the late Archean, that means after some time, there was extensive formation of a gneissic rocks throughout the whole of the peninsula, and you can go to say that is Eastern Ghats at that point of time. And also at that point of time, you will go on to observe there is a gneiss formation. Gneiss is formed. Towards the close of the Archean era, Dharwad and Amgaon orogenies took place. The Dharwad mountains that you're going to find it, that is even thereafter. That means the Dharwad mountains now went on to form. Now that's where you're going to find the area of Dharwad folding. The entire of this area is going to be that of Dharwad folding. So at that point of time. And later on, Bundelkhand, that is where you're going to find Bundelkhand. That is the place. This is the region of Bundelkhand region. That's the place where Bundelkhand is going to be formed. So Bundelkhand was a volcanic formation that ultimately went on to form. That was going to be in the northeastern part of the peninsula in this case. Then this was the story of Archean. During the Proterozoic, this is one story. This is one story that took place. Thereafter, you're going to take a look at another of this story. That is Proterozoic. After Archean, it was Proterozoic. And what were the things that happened in Proterozoic? The first thing that happened was Aravali formation. That was the first thing, Aravali formation. And then thereafter it was Delhi orogeny. That is Delhi ranges. Now Delhi ranges are a part of the Aravali, but they are different from that. And it was at this point of time that Eastern Ghats were also reformed. That means in some cases that is they were extending, they may have been evolving, and they started getting themselves reformed as well. That was during Proterozoic. After that it was Satpura mountains. That is the sequence in which they started forming Satpura mountains. And after Satpura, it was going to be Shillong Plateau and Travancore region. This was the region. That is Shillong Plateau and Travancore region, that was going to be here. Now, we are going to be talking about continental nuclei. That is, all of these nuclei formed during different periods and they started joining together. So, it was Shillong Plateau and Travancore region thereafter. Now, so you go on to observe one thing, that is, you're going to observe that is all the mountains are going to be site of a welding of these two nuclei. And as you're going to see it, that is this is Aravali, and Aravalis went on to be the site of two of these nuclei here and there. Dharwad, they went on to become the site of welding of two of these plates, two of these nuclei, one on this side, another on this side, two of them. And this is how exactly you're going to find that is the formation of the entire geological personality of India. You'll also going to find that Himalayas are now at present, Himalayas are the welding site of two continents, one here and one on the other side. One going to be here and the other is going to be on the other side of it. So mountains were going to become the site, a welding site of two different nuclei. And all the mountains that formed kept welding continental nuclei, which are now the welding site of two blocks getting together. For example, take the case of the Satpura ranges. This is where you're going to find Satpura ranges. So Satpura ranges got welded, two of them, that is the northern portion of it and the southern portion of it. It is along this portion that you're going to find the Satpura ranges. That is the region of Satpura folding. This is the region of Satpura folding all along. This is the place of Satpura folding in the region. So Satpura got itself welded, two of these blocks in this case. Similarly, along Aravalli, the two portions had got themselves welded. Along this portion, as we talked about, that is these two portions got themselves welded, and both towards the west and the east, and so has been the case with Dharwar, Singhbhum, and so on, so forth. So there were numerous mountain building activities that were taking place, and these mountain building activities kept on welding different types of plates into different type of nuclei, and leading to an increase in the area of the continents. So it was in this manner that the continent, that is India, extended all the way up till where we go on to talk of, that is up till Meghalaya region. It was, of course, later on that so many events took place that ultimately buried a lot of these things from Raj Mahal, from this region, Raj Mahal, and that of the Garo region. These two, in between these portions, the whole of this portion went on to sink. And as it went on to sink, then in the process of its sinking, that was covered by a massive layer of sedimentary deposit. So something happened. Now understand it. So while a good amount of these developments were taking place, it was at the same time that there were certain type of sedimentary deposits that were developing, and these sedimentary deposits were developing here. That is where we're going to be calling it by the name of Kadapa Depression. So a lot of events were taking place simultaneously. To simplify that, the events that were taking place that were simple. That is, a lot of continental nuclei were formed. These continental nuclei started joining together, and as these continental nuclei started joining together, then that led to the increase in the size of the continent. As the size of the continents went on to increase, this went on to form the geological personality of a present day India. Right now, you can go to pick up another of it. That is in simplified manner. Assuming that these were the type of continental nuclei that were getting themselves formed. Now, these continental nuclei ultimately went on to co-join together. As they joined together, then the joining together led to the formation of many of them in one place. And in the center of it, there were mountain formations. So, as one continental nuclei collided with another one, in the center of it was a mountain formation, and then that went on to form one continent. Then this collided with another one, let's say here, and then there was the formation of another mountain. So this went on to form a separate continental block. Now understand this part. You're going to take a look at the Aravallis here. That's the place that you're going to find Aravalli mountains. That's one. Aravalli mountains had already been formed. Now these Aravalli mountains by Proterozoic, by this time that we're going to be calling it by Proterozoic. This age that had started getting itself eroded. Eroded, that means there is by that time oxygen had evolved, rainfall used to be taking place, and that started getting itself eroded. And these eroded sediments were being let down in the form of sandstone and limestone. This is Aravalli. So this is where Aravalli mountains may have been. And in the front of it, there was a sea. It was this sea that started getting itself filled up with the sediments that were brought from the Aravallis. It is this filling of the sea that led to the evolution of what we're going to call it as a Vindhyan deposits. or Vindhyan sediments. These are called as Vindhyan deposits. And these Vindhyan deposits were deposited on the Precambrian region itself. So, in the Proterozoic itself, that means that later on, Bastar depression, Bastar formed, Chhattisgarh formed, so imagine this sequence, how it is taking place. That means Bastar and Chhattisgarh formed much after Aravalli formation. So they formed a contemporary to that of Vindhyan. That means when you have to answer this question, that is who formed first, which formed first, which formed later on, then that's the way that you have to remember. Now comes what we're going to say is Paleozoic. Now, Paleozoic, as you understand it, that is, by this time life had evolved on the earth, because the name as it goes on suggests Paleozoic. Paleozoic means, that is, Paleo means past, and Zoic is the life of it. So, during the lower Paleozoic, that is, lower Paleozoic, in the first part of the Paleozoic, is generally not going to be found in India. And there are many reasons for it. That means, why exactly is it that the records from Cambrian, Ordovician, Silurian, Devonian have not been found in India? Is because at this point of a time there were no volcanic activity, or there were no depositional events as well. When we're going to talk about that there were no depositional events and there was no volcanic activity, then that basically goes on to mean at this point of a time or that point of a time, because volcanic activity has not been there, so consequently there are no layers associated with it. Similarly, there was no sedimentation, so that is also the layers are going to be absent in this case. So this was taking place all along what we're going to be talking about during Paleozoic. So Archean, there were many mountain forms. Proterozoic, there were some formations that took place. Later Proterozoic, Chhattisgarh Bastar depression, and by Paleozoic, that is, the records are by and large absent. It is only in the latter part of Paleozoic that certain things started happening. So, pick up this case now. As you can go on to take this case of India, you will go to understand and observe that if there was one mountain that was called as Dharawar, then there were two blocks that got themselves fused in with Dharwad. That was the way it fused. Then if there was going to be one of these mountains that was going to be Satpura, then that was going to be one of them that got itself fused. This is how exactly it got fused. Then you're going to find this was going to be Aravalli. Then Aravalli was the meeting point of two of them. That was one was here and another was here. Then you're going to find that is it was a Singhbhum region. Then this was going to be one of this continent, and then there was another of this continent. So this is the way that is the geographical personality ultimately went on to evolve. And once the Aravalli is formed, that is started depositing its load into these areas, which was a sea, and that sea started getting itself filled up. So at this point of a time, India was with all of those continents joined together. That is where India was. As you can go to find it, and this is the place India was. That is where it was happening. Now, after a certain amount of a time, that means in Paleozoic itself, that is the first part of Paleozoic was Cambrian, Ordovician, Silurian, Devonian. Carboniferous onwards, India started getting itself ruptured. And India started getting itself separated out of all of them. And it was in this process of this separation that India ultimately formed its geographical personality. See how is it that it getting itself separated from all of them. That is, India got itself ruptured, and after having got itself ruptured, it collided with the Eurasian region. And it was only in this process of this collision that it led to the formation of the Himalayan mountain ranges. As you can go to see, that is, India was joined together with all of these continents. And while it was joined together, it started getting itself fragmented. It was in this process of its fragmentation that there was a rupture that took place. along all of this rupture, of course there were certain things that were taking place. So a lot of events started taking place all along this region. There was volcanic activity, and a volcanic activity kept on taking place until India ultimately collided with the whole of Eurasia. Now let's see what exactly may have been the event at that point of a time, and how is it that they shaped up. We are talking about, that is, India was part of all of them. Now, there was a crack that moved here. There was another crack that was taking shape in this manner. This is how it was. Now, all along this crack, there was a lot of volcanic activity that took place. And this volcanic activity led to the formation of what we now going to call it as Deccan basalt. That was one part. It led to formation of Deccan basalt. Now, India got itself separated in this manner. Along this region, this was a crack along which Africa got itself separated. For example, separation of Africa was along this region. So Africa got itself separated along this region. And this is where India was. So there was a crack that passed through India also. And along this region, India should also have got itself separated. But the force that was responsible for breaking this part was not strong enough. So India could not go on to get itself completely ruptured. Although what happened was, there was a crack that developed in this region. It is this crack that is now going to be called by the name of Narmada Rift Valley. That is where you're going to find Narmada Rift Valley. So Narmada Rift Valley formed because of this type of a crack. And now, so volcanic activity started taking place. So volcanic activity took place in a variety of ways. One of it was through this crack volcanic activity took place. And then the Narmada Rift Valley, as that also developed, then there was another volcanic activity. And while, as you're going to see, that India was moving ahead, then there was a lot of pouring that took place as India passed over Reunion Island. So there were three forms of volcanic activity that started taking place on India. Now, once the Narmada Rift Valley was formed, what happened thereafter as Narmada Rift Valley was formed? Narmada Rift Valley was, its position was this is where Narmada Rift Valley was, and along this portion, whole of India was going to develop a crack. Now what happened was, this was the crack that took place. It was like a fault. If you can go to see it from a profile, this was a crack. This was the southern portion. Maybe you can go to consider this to be Satpura. You can go to consider to be the northern portion, that is where the Vindhya was. And in between, that was a crack, that was a Rift Valley. This is where a Rift Valley ultimately came into being. Then in this Rift Valley, this crack, what happened was, all of these areas eroded and got themselves deposited. Now these areas had a lot of vegetation cover as well, because by that time Carboniferous, the whole of the world was hot and humid. So it was thick, lush green vegetation. This vegetation started decomposing in this region, and a good amount of vegetation went on to fall inside as well, and then it started decomposing. It was this decomposition of it that ultimately led to the formation of what we're going to be calling it as Gondwana deposit. Gondwana deposit coal. That was formation of coal in that region. So this coal formation took place all the way from Narmada, Son, and then Damodar. Accordingly, it is going to be called by the name of NSD. In technical terms, it is going to be called as the Narmada, Son, Damodar, lineament. That was the name that was going to be given to it. And it is one of these biggest rift valley that you're going to find in the world. In this rift valley, what you're going to find deposited is? You're going to find deposited is coal deposits. And these coal deposits are so easily available, largely because they're going to be on the sides. This is where you're going to find coal deposits all along these sides. So it's very easy to mine these type of coal deposits in India. It's a different matter that we may not have understood it, we may not have utilized this part at all. So, while this development was taking place, there was another development that was taking place. That is, as India was moving from south, it was moving from this place, moving from here, moving from here, moving from here, and ultimately collided with the Himalayas. So while it went on to be from one step, second step, third step, fourth step, and so on, there was the western portion of it, that is this western portion of it that ultimately sank. So if this was so, then along all of this line there was a massive deposition of sediments. So how is it that a sediment deposition had taken place? This was Africa. This is where India was, and from this crack there was deposition that took place. And how is it that the deposits had taken place? Now understand it from another diagram. There is a deposit that had taken place was one layer, then there was another 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 layer. Now so many of these layers had developed, so many of them, that ultimately you go on to find that is these layers had been step by step. That means that they are like that, one step, another step. That means the first volcanic activity was very, very extensive. The second volcanic activity was not so. The third was even less. The fourth was even less. So that led to the evolution and development of what we're going to be calling it as traps. Traps means step-like. It led to formation of step-like features in this case. So while this was taking place, this is why we're going to be calling Deccan region as Deccan traps. So while this was taking place, at the same time there was the formation of a fault crack all along this place. This is where there was a fault formation, and this fault formation basically meant that that is all along this portion of India. That is the western portion sank. And with the sinking of this western portion, that gave a characteristic shape to the Western Ghat. So how do you go to see Western Ghat right now? This is how exactly the Western Ghats are made. Because of the formation of a crack, because of the formation of a fault all along this zone. This is where a Western Ghat formation took place. So Western Ghat formation took place, which led to the formation of a such type of a feature. Thus, India, after being fragmented, got separated from all the continents, that is Africa, Australia, Antarctica, and it started moving northward. And as the already broken India passed over reunion hotspot, there was a lot of volcanic activity took place, and ultimately India collided with Eurasia. And in this fast movement, collided with Tibetan Asia and Eurasia, and of course there were a lot of features that took place in this manner. You're going to take a look at this another portion of it, that is India after having got itself separated out from here. After it got itself separated out from this zone, it has started moving northward. And as you can go to take a look at it, what happens to India? That is, India is getting itself separated, a lot of cracks are, and that is getting separated from Africa, and India will start moving towards north. India incidentally also accomplished one of the fastest movement ever to have taken place by any of the broken plate. There's no broken plate, there's no plate that showed such a fast movement. See how exactly fast India is moving towards north. It is moving, keeps on moving, and it starts getting itself collided. And it is in this process of collision that of course it leads to the formation of the present geographical or geological personality of India. That is going to be one of the ways, and this is how exactly all the shapes of Indian continent went on to evolve as well. So India was moving northward, and this is how exactly India collided with it as well. It was in this process of movement that a lot of development and activities were taking place. So as India started moving northward, that is northward movement has started taking place. We're going to take a look at that. This is the present personality of India, and its northward movement had taken place. This is how exactly India is going to be moving northward, moving further northward, moving further northward, moving further northward, and as you're going to say, that is moving northward. In the process of it is going to be folding good number of sediments that have been brought up in this place. This is where a good number of sediments have been deposited. As you can go to find it, there is a more northward movement further that goes on to lead to formation of collision zones and the formation of the Himalayas. See, this is the place where the Tibetan plateaus are going to form. In this place, see how exactly India is colliding in this case, and it leads to the formation of Tibetan plateau. Ultimately, it leads to the formation of a complete of India right now. So, in front of Eurasia, there was a narrow, shallow depression, and it was this narrow, shallow depression that got itself filled up. And as it got itself filled up, then it led to the formation of as the collision took place, it led to the formation of Himalayan mountain ranges. How is it that the Himalayan mountain went on to form? It was this collision that took place. As it collided, kept on pushing northward, and it was this aspect that ultimately led to the formation of the Himalayas. And not only formation of it, it also led to the upliftment of the Himalayas as well. And it was in this manner that Himalayas came to acquire the present form of it. You will go on to find this was the Tethys that has started getting itself enclosed. As you're going to find it, and in the process of enclosement, the whole of Tethys was furrowed into a small ranges. There were a lot of longitudinal ranges that took place, and ultimately they got themselves folded to lead to the formation of the Himalayan mountain ranges. As you can go to see, there is the two bodies are approaching each other, and the whole of this Tethys is getting itself furrowed into many longitudinal mountain ranges. These mountain ranges started getting themselves compressed, and it is in this process of compression that leads to the formation of the Himalayan mountain ranges. So it was in this process that Himalayas ultimately went on to form, and it was the formation of the Himalayas that led to the formation of many other features associated with it. As you can go to find it subsequently, Himalayas collided, and as you can go to see, that is the collision of Himalayas led to the upliftment of the whole of the region. Take a look at it. That's collision that has taken place, and it is after this collision that the Himalayan mountain ranges are going to be rising, and it is this rising that goes on to actually lead to the evolution of the present personality of the Himalayan mountain ranges. So while the collision took place, that in the process of this collision, the collision was so strong that it led to the evolution of many cracks. It led to the formation of many faults. See these faults that is emerging. Take a look at these type of faults that were emerging in this place. This is how exactly the faults develop. Two faults happen to develop in this place. It is along these faults that a lot of earthquake in the present day is taking place right now. So the collision was going to be very, very strong, and it is these faults that now go on to be called by the name of MBT, MCT, that is main boundary thrust, main central thrust, and main frontal thrust, and so on and so forth. Now, as India collided with it, and that led to the formation of fault, what also happened was that the portion of India went inside the Tibetan region. As you can go to take a look at it, that is as India collided, taking a look at it, that is the portion of India went inside the Tibetan Plateau region. That is, it kept on plowing inside, kept on moving inside. Take a look and take another look at it, and you'll go on to find it. That is, as it started moving inside, then beneath Eurasia, it led to formation of there was another continental material. That means there was another lithosphere. So there were two lithospheres that were kept. One was that of Tibetan region, and there was another one that was of India. This is what will go on to give you a better picture of it. So there was an Indian lithosphere, there was going to be Indian plate had gone inside it, and this was the Tibetan region. You will go on to understand it even better with another diagram as well. That is, as India moved northward and it collided with whole of Eurasia, this is what happened. That is, you can go to see it. This was India moving northward. So it led to the formation of the Himalayan mountain ranges. That is stage number 1. Stage number 2 had been, that is, as it moved inside, by this time the Himalayan mountain ranges had evolved, and beneath it was one that was, this is where India was, this is where Eurasia was, or Tibet was. So this was going to be continent. So you're going to find one continent, and then you're going to find another continent beneath. So two continents. You're going to take a look at it in another way. That is, this is the condition that is going to be an exceptional condition. That is almost like that. You're going to have one continent here, and then you have another continent. In this case, now meaning that there are going to be two continents. It's like, and they are going to be floating on the asthenosphere. This is the layer on which they are going to be floating. Now this is an analogy like, supposing you have a tumbler which is going to be having a wooden block that is floating. Now you're going to keep another wooden block beneath it. That is, this is number 1, this is number 1, this is number 2, this is number 2. So you're going to keep number 1 beneath another wooden block. What will happen? This will go on to rise. So because there is going to be 2 layers of continental material, it goes on to rise. And as it goes on to rise, it leads to formation of very high rising plateau. So this was another part that took place in this case. So this is what is going to be called by the name of under thrusting. And because under thrusting takes place or had taken place, under thrusting took place or had taken place, then it is this under thrusting, I repeat it, it is this under thrusting that has been largely responsible for upliftment of the Tibetan Plateau region. So rather than sinking and melting in this manner beneath the Tibetan region, beneath this Tibetan region, rather than sinking and melting in this manner, it went inside under thrusting it. That has been the case. Now, this is the diagram of it. While this was taking place, there was another event that was also taking place at the same time. As India was moving northward, the collision was taking place. This collision was taking place in such a manner, that is, India moved northward, and after having moved northward, what it did was that, as you find it, that is, it turned. This is how exactly it turned. It rotated. It got itself turned. See this manner? That is, the way it is going to be moving, the way it is going to be moving, the way it is going to be moving, and then it got itself rotated in this manner. It is this rotation in this manner that is responsible for giving Himalayas what type of a shape? It is responsible for giving Himalayas an arc shape. That is, if you are going to consider this is going to be India, then why is it that the Himalayas happen to take this type of shape? It is because of this rotation. So India was somewhere here, and then it rotated in such a manner. It is this rotation that has given rise to 2 syntaxial bends. That means 2 belts that are going to be very, very sharp. One is here. These are going to be called by this name of syntaxial bend. So because India rotated, this is how exactly it rotated. The shape of Himalayas came into being. That is, the arc shape of Himalayas came into being. So the evolution has been, in this case, beginning from where it began all the way from that of the formation of the peninsula, then the collision of peninsula with Eurasia, then the formation of the Himalayas. So, and as the Himalayas formed, after the formation of this Himalayas, you will go on to find it, that is Himalayas, after it went on to form, then it was Himalayas led to formation of a deep trough in the front of it. This was peninsula. Himalayas had formed now. And in between it was a depression. It was almost like a deep trough. What we're going to be calling it as trough. This trough got itself filled up. And when this trough got itself filled up, that led to the evolution of the plains. And that is where how Indo-Gangetic plains came into being. The formation of these Indo-Gangetic plains is because of all of these factors. While all of this activity was going on, there were other activities that were also going on in a parallel manner. Take a look at it. So, while Himalayas were being formed, the whole of this portion, almost the whole of this portion, was under sea. This portion was under sea. And because it was under sea, it leads to the evolution of what we're going to call it as a shelf. So, Rajasthan shelf, Gujarat shelf, that is the name that is going to be given to it. So, all of these developments were taking place in a parallel, contemporary manner while the Himalayas were being formed. So, while, of course, the Gangetic Plain was also being formed, this was also being formed, and all of those portions that were under sea at that point of a time. Now, because they were under sea at that point of a time, it led to formation and evolution of petroleum deposits. That is in Gujarat, that is in Rajasthan, that was also going to be in Cuttack, that was also going to be in Tanjore. So all of these evolved themselves into shelf areas. And it was this form of a shelf area that evolved, which led to the formation of the Rajasthan shelf, Gujarat shelf, Kutch shelf, and so on so forth. Now this is how the geological personality of India came into being. So, to make it short and to sum it up, the first was a formation of a nuclei. Then it was in nuclei that there were 4 layers: greenstone, and that led to the formation of a basement. The second was this basement collided, collision of all of these basements. That led to formation of mountains. Mountains led to formation of welding. That led to increase in size. The third was, this is how exactly Indian Peninsula evolved. The fourth was rupturing of Indian Peninsula. It ruptured, it broke. After rupturing, it collided. Rupturing led to volcanic activity. Fifth was its collision with Eurasia, that led to the formation of Himalayas. The sixth was the formation of a Rajasthan, Gujarat and shelves because they were under sea. And the seventh was that while Himalayas formed, that led to formation of a four deep. And it was this four deep that filled up to lead to formation of plains. That is how the present geological personality of India came to evolve.
To have more such discussions and analysis, subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon for notifications on our upcoming videos.